What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Unwise Girls, your favorite podcast, hopefully, about all of Rick Riordan's funny little books. We're coming back. I'm your host, Jacqueline.
Hello, it's me, Jane.
And Jane is also here. How are you doing today, Janie?
I am doing pretty good. I ordered some funny little Lego men in the mail and they arrived today.
Lego men? That's awesome. Yeah. Were they Percy Jackson Lego men?
They unfortunately are not. They're little clone troopers.
Oh, that's fine. Nerd.
How are you
Nord?
today? Yeah, rude.
No, it's okay. I'm good. I'm excited to talk about these chapters.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we should get right into it, and I can deliver all of you the sweet, sweet summary.
Let's go.
Chapter 5. I get a new cabin mate. At the increasingly militarized Camp Half-Blood, Percy, Tyson, and Annabeth find Chiron, who reveals that he's been replaced as director because the gods blame him for not stopping the tree poisoning, even though to Percy's mind it was clearly Kronos' fault. Annabeth is distraught, but swears upon the sticks at Chiron's insistence that she'll protect Percy because of the mysterious prophecy that Percy doesn't know about yet. On the way to dinner, we're introduced to Hephaestus cabin leader Charles Beckendorf and the new Hermes cabin leaders Travis and Connor Stoll. At dinner proper, Chiron's replacement, Tantalus, announces that he's reinstating the dangerous sport of camp chariot racing, which Clarice is against because it'll interfere with patrol. He also humiliates Tyson for being a monster with nowhere to belong before, surprisingly, Tyson is claimed by Poseidon. Chapter 6. Demon Pigeons Attack. Percy is being bullied by the other campers for having a Cyclops brother, and he's on the defensive. He's not really my brother and all that. When Annabeth and Percy start on designs for a chariot, though, Annabeth calls Tyson a monster, and Percy gets pissed. They argue and break up the team, and Percy joins with Tyson instead. The next few days are Pegasus lessons from daughter of Aphrodite, Selena Beauregard, sword training with Apollo cabin, Tyson forging things with Hephaestus cabin, and evening border patrol. Tyson and Percy have a little heart-to-heart, and when Percy falls asleep, he dreams of Grover, who tells him he's being held captive by the Cyclops Polyphemus, and that he's bonded his soul and life to Percy's. At the chariot races the next morning, the campers compete fiercely, until Stymphalian birds descend and attack. Annabeth and Percy use the cacophony of Chiron's Dean Martin collection to drive the birds away, and Clarice is deemed the race's winner as the only one who crossed the finish line. Chapter 7. I accept gifts from a stranger. The gang, Annabeth, Tyson, and Percy, are punished by Tantalus for the bird attack, and during they work out that Grover found the Golden Fleece, which can cure Thalia's tree, and he's trapped somewhere in the Sea of Monsters, located in the Bermuda Triangle. After some campfire songs that night, they publicly announce that, to force Tantalus into giving them a quest, but he gives it to Clarice instead, and then scares the kids with the story of how he used to be a king until he was forsaken by the gods, who he stole from and also fed his children to. After Percy and Tyson have another heart-to-heart where Percy laments Tyson's bad life, he goes out onto the beach where he meets a mysterious jogger who turns out to be Hermes, god of thieves and travelers, who gives him some advice and journeying supplies, including a lunchbox with the 4 winds inside, just in case, and chewable multivitamin gummies, and also asks for Percy's help to save Luke. Chapter 8. We board the Princess Andromeda. Tyson and Annabeth run over to find Percy alone, and after the gang decides to head out on a forbidden quest and Percy implores his dad for help, the gang ride out on Poseidon-gifted hippocampi toward a nearby cruise liner Hermes pointed out to him as a good destination to go to. They arrive at the huge ship Princess Andromeda. Tyson sadly parts from his hippocampus, named Rainbow, and when they board, Tyson warns them that there's a bad smell like monsters all around. They find an empty suite to sleep in for the night, and Percy dreams of Kronos taunting him, and Grover buying time until Polyphemus eats him. When they all wake up, they hear an announcement that they're late for disemboweling practice. Through the ship, things are weird. People are acting like robots, and hellhounds are eating scrambled eggs. When they hear a familiar voice, they hide and listen. It's Luke, arguing with someone named Agrius about a trap they've set and a coffin to be checked on. The gang decide to take on Luke before leaving. What do you think of these chapters?
They're an improvement for sure.
Oh, they absolutely are.
I still have thoughts and opinions TM about them, but there are some like really great scenes in here and bits that I enjoyed quite a lot.
Oh yeah, and I think we're on the upswing.
Absolutely.
Okay, should we just start with the Tyson in the room?
We should address the Tyson in the room.
Okay, hello Tyson. Thank you for being in the room. I would like to talk today to you, Tyson, and also listeners about the way that you're written in this book.
Yep.
And he's kind of a character, right?
He's kind of a character now.
But he's still not really a character.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't entirely bad. Some of this is okay. Like, some of this is, like, it works as, like, the story. Because Tyson's function currently is to be, like, Percy's weird brother.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the old story of, like, you have a sibling who's weird, and you're, like, you get bullied because they're weird, and you're their sibling.
Yeah.
And you, like, get really defensive about that. But also, like, if somebody talks shit about them, you will be like, hey, only, like, you can't say that. Like, he's a great brother, you know, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think on that level, this is another example of, like, this is good.
A good way of making it, like, relatable for kids.
Yeah, it's a good way of making it relatable for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's good. Tyson still is a little bit of a caricature, though.
I think it's gotten slightly better in these chapters just because, like, some of the comedy scenes that Tyson's in aren't about, haha, he is large and ugly and dumb, and more a case of just, he doesn't understand this world that is completely magical and that he could not possibly understand. And that feels, like, a lot less mean-spirited.
Which is interesting because he is a Cyclops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Tyson stuff is improving. I still hope to see more from him, I guess.
I'm wondering if this is something that can actually be, like, pulled back from, or if, like, Tyson is just at his core conceptually rotten.
I don't know if he's conceptually rotten. I think he's mishandled.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
Because you're right, it is getting better. There's other things like what you were saying before about the campers talking shit about Tyson, is that, like, the way he's treated is becoming a lot more a function of, like, the characters as opposed to coming from, like, the authorial voice.
Yeah, and that's, like, bullying is, like, a topic in Percy Jackson. This is, like, a consistent theme.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's good to see it, like, look, we're getting different angles on it.
Yeah.
That's important. That's good. But it's, I don't know. It's good. I mean, it's not all good, but it's still, like, that part is good.
Yeah, that part is.
I just think in general the story starts getting a lot better, like, as soon as Tyson gets claimed.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's this really interesting parallel between the first few chapters where the bully comes in and is like, Tyson is Arsler, and Percy's like, Tyson is not Arsler. And these chapters where Annabeth, while building a chariot with Percy, is like, Tyson's a monster. And Percy's like, you can't call him a monster. He's not a monster.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. He reacts in a very similar way.
I think it's interesting to establish that parallel, because I think it works with who Annabeth is as a character, who isn't, like, always super, like, emotionally, like...
intelligent.
Yeah, not always emotionally intelligent. She is a bit of a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
So I guess it's, like, Annabeth is being a bit of a bully. And I think it's good to show that, like, sometimes you have friends who are, like, treating someone wrong, and you should stand up for that person, even if they're your friends.
Yeah, and I guess it's also a case of like bullying isn't always Clarice trying to dunk your head in the toilet. It can sometimes just be like someone making an offhand shitty remark.
Yeah. Like, oh, all those Cyclops are treacherous and deceitful, and he's just another one of the like it's
Hmm.
interesting to get from Annabeth, and I actually do appreciate that we got it.
Yeah.
Speaking of Cyclops.
Okay, I was going to go speaking of Clarice, but I'll go after you.
Oh, okay. Speaking of speaking of Cyclops, we get the name of the villain of this book in these chapters, Polyphemus,
Yeah.
who is the big Cyclops who is holding Grover captive. I
Hmm.
didn't necessarily mention it in the description of the chapters, but Grover has a special little strategy to not get found out and not get eaten.
He does.
That special little strategy is that he's pretending to be a lady Cyclops.
Guy in dress joke or cute Norse mythology reference, you decide.
Tell me about the mythology reference.
The mythology reference would be to Thor's hammer getting nicked by the ice giants, I think. And basically, to get it back, Loki brings Thor in disguised as a woman who like will marry one of the ice giants, and they'll give Mjolnir as a dowry. And so Thor has to spend like the entire wedding party like pulling his veil down, trying to avoid getting discovered. And then at the end, he gets Mjolnir back and kills everyone.
I'd never heard of that, but I think that's extremely possible.
Because I mean, this series does go into Norse mythology territory later.
Yeah, yeah, we got the Magnus Chase stuff and whatever. I'll call it probable. It
Yeah,
is also kind of a funny Harry Grover in a dress joke.
that is the absolute most sympathetic read you can take on it. But it is, even if that was the intention, kind of like that.
Yeah, like you can write anything. See, I wrote this complex plot about it's a really subtle reference to Greek mythology or Norse mythology. Like it's still what it is, right?
Yeah,
It's still boy in dress, funny joke, Harry.
I mean,
It's
it's not quite played for laughs, but Percy does also say that under other circumstances he would be laughing at it. So I don't know.
yeah, I think it's intended to be humorous.
Hmm.
It describes like, oh, Grover putting on a falsetto to call
Yeah,
out, and like he's doing the. But it also kind of feels like what's that story about like the lady who tells a bunch of stories to a person so that like he doesn't kill her or whatever.
I have absolutely
uh
no idea.
it's like it was in Scooby-Doo, and Shaggy and Scooby-Doo would tell someone like 1,001 stories, um because they were the official taste testers for this guy's food, but they ate all the food, and so he was going to kill them. But then they started telling him stories, and I think Shaggy was also in a dress at one point.
Huh.
So I guess what I'm saying is, what do you have to say about Clarice?
We didn't get as much of her in these chapters as I was maybe hoping for, but I think she is still moving in that like rival slash ally direction that I was hoping for.
Yeah, same. But we do get more of her than we did in like the first book.
She's definitely getting like more development and more depth.
She's being set up for like later on.
Yeah,
I like that. I like the like we see her like reservations against like obviously evil, overtly evil activities director Tantalus.
hmm
When he's like, let's bring back the chariot races, and Clarice is like, well, I love violent sports, but we gotta patrol the border for like watching out for monsters.
yeah. I like that all the like characters who are opposed to Percy don't just like group together. They can like disagree about stuff.
Yeah, and like there's still comments about like, oh, I wouldn't, do swords with Ares cabin because we're not friends. But like, yeah, of course they're not friends. He beat up their dad.
Yeah,
So like that doesn't even feel like a I don't know, weird Slytherin thing. It just feels like, yeah, that makes sense. Of course he would do swords fighting with Apollo cabin.
yeah. I do. What you were saying about Clarice being set up, I think there is a 90% chance they're going to run into her on the quest.
Oh, I mean, almost certainly, because they both went out on the quest at the same time.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember, like, some events that may be like that, and I'm terrified for when we get there.
Okay. I only remember one thing from this book. Well, two things.
What is
I
it?
remember that the sea monsters were the Bermuda Triangle, and I
Very good
remember,
concept.
like, the big ending twist.
I don't remember that, so I guess I'm excited to
Okay.
get there.
I don't want to say it in case anyone who's listening along also doesn't know.
True. I keep wanting to say things like, oh, the coffin obviously contains blah, blah, blah. But, like,
Dio.
the coffin obviously contains Dio. But, oh, wouldn't that be so good if Luke and Agrius, or Agrius? Maybe Agrius.
I have no
Are just,
idea.
like, hauling Dio across the world. I'd love that.
Listen, they're sworn to an ancient evil who's like a chopped up, mutilated body. And that's what Dio is, so.
So true. Oh god. Yeah, and like Clarice as the quest champion makes sense, even though it's obviously like a spiteful move by a jerk.
It's a spiteful
Like,
move, but she's been defending the camp all this time.
yeah, she is the camp's champion. Like, not just in like kind of weird chariot racing circumstances, but also she has been defending the camp from monsters this whole time.
Exactly.
There's that gut instinct to be like, oh, Clarissa's the mean one. I don't, it's like, obviously, like, oh, it's unfair. The heroes wanted to go on the journey. The heroes wanted to go on the hero's journey.
Yeah.
But, it's like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I like that Rick's leaning into that because Percy is not spiteful towards Clarice and even observes that she seems to be quite uncomfortable with this.
We get a more humanized Clarice.
Mm-hmm.
Camp Half-Blood transformed into movie Camp Half-Blood while Percy was gone. Nothing is more unnerving than that. Like,
Why would you say that? You're right, but why would you say that?
everybody's wearing like armor all the time, and they're all like just like polishing their weapons all instead of like hanging out and playing volleyball or whatever. It's
Yeah.
and
The poison in the
okay,
tree has made all the visual effects worse.
the poison in the tree moved them into a Canadian forest. I wonder if that movie was shot in New Zealand. That's the movie that kind of feels like it maybe would have been shot in New Zealand.
I feel like that was in a forest outside Vancouver or something.
That could also be right. New Zealand is for like Power Rangers and Lord of the Rings. We talked a little bit last time about like, oh, it's a very easy kids book trope to be like the safe haven you had last time has now transformed into something dangerous.
Yeah.
How do you think that was executed in this chapter?
Really well, I think. Like, there's so many little atmospheric bits. Like, I'm trying to find it. The part where Percy goes on like the informal evening patrol, and like all the satyrs are like playing their little enchanted pipes, and it briefly makes everything better, and then they stop, and everything immediately just goes to shit again.
Yeah, it's really like apparent how bad this poisoning is affecting everyone, and not just like the poison is literally like destroying the hill and making like the strawberry fields bad, but also like it's obvious kind of like underneath that it's like Thalia is dying,
Yeah,
and that's like hurting people's like spirits.
it builds such a good sense of atmosphere.
We rag on Chiron a lot,
Yes.
and maybe sometimes a bit unfairly.
Mostly because it's funny to laugh at the piss horse.
It's very funny to laugh at the piss horse, but it does actually kind of like get to your heart to see him go. I think it's the part that like Annabeth is in the room while he's saying that he's leaving, and like Annabeth seeing him as like a second father. It's not something that like was necessarily like established already in the previous book or anything, but it's so like obvious, I guess.
Yeah, the first time I read that, I thought it felt a little bit out of nowhere, but on reflection, it does like make sense that she would view him that way.
Yeah, because she's lived at Camp Half-Blood for like half her life. That like it hurts to see your horse friend go.
Yeah.
People are back to Clarice for a moment. People are like bullying her too.
Are they?
Somebody
What
like
is this?
puts a kick me sign on her back.
The You Moo Girl thing.
Yeah, they put a note on her back that says, "You moo, girl," which, like, what the hell?
I think that's just supposed to be like Ares' cabin of dicks.
I mean, I don't, kind of, I think so.
Because, like, it says immediately after nobody in her cabin was bothering to tell her about it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's specifically saying, like, oh, it was someone in her cabin who did it, like, or whether it's, like, somebody else did it, but they just don't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because, like, back to bullying, like, we're seeing that, like, oh, sometimes the people who, are mean to you also are being, like, bullied too, I guess.
There is not just a designated mean kid, all kids are horrible little shits.
Very, well, yeah, sort of. Yeah, very true. It's bad vibes.
Yeah.
You feel a lot more sympathetic to Clarice, I think, when she starts being bullied, which kind of feels weird to say. What do you think about Percy being the Camp Half-Blood's best sword fighter in hundreds of years?
I mean, he took Ares in single combat, so, like, I feel like that's not unjustified.
It's kind of like how, like, Annabeth used Chiron. It's kind of the same thing with, like, oh, like, this makes sense, but it takes a minute of, like, thinking about it to be like, oh, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, you need to, like, place it in the broader context of the first book to really, like, make sense of it.
Yeah, I wonder if is he, like, splashing water on himself before every match? Or is he just that good now?
I think that he is creeping behind the stands and just pouring a little bit of water from his canteen on him like some athlete sneaking away to take steroids.
Does this count as juicing?
I think they all have magic powers, so I don't know where you draw the line with that.
I guess so. Interesting.
Oh, I quickly want to mention that I thought of a very funny joke for last week's episode and then forgot to say it.
Okay, tell us your joke. Wait, everybody shut up. Everyone be quiet. Everyone sit down. Jane has a joke. All right. Introducing to the stage, Jane.
Well, of course Hephaestus would be the one with a weird fixation on bulls.
All right, everyone, that was Jane. Give her a hand. Clap, 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 clap. Yeah, all right, everyone, that was awesome. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming tonight. This was your one-woman comedy show. Sorry.
Listen, I just wanted to mention that before I got invalidated by the fact that apparently Hephaestus is also getting some.
I mean, yeah, of course he has kids, Like, we talked about it we talked about it in the last book. Of course Hephaestus is super popular with ladies.
It's true. He knows how to use those hands.
Yeah, and, like, he seems like he'd be a nice guy. I don't know.
Does he? I still think he's probably a bit of a weirdo.
Probably. But also, okay, that is, like, ricocheting my brain around to get to something I forgot to talk about earlier.
Oh, okay.
Hephaestus cabin, forging, Tyson forging with Hephaestus cabin. Okay, this is interesting.
We've arrived at Jacqueline's thought.
Yes, we've arrived at the station. Because we learned that, like, Cyclopes are, like, confined to the forges of Hephaestus.
Mm-hmm.
To, like, work tirelessly because, they're, like, immune to fire and stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting that, like, Tyson is finding some degree of, like, joy and self-actualization in forging with Hephaestus cabin.
Oh, yeah, that is kind of...
I don't know if it's, like, something like, oh, it's his base nature or something like that, or if it's like, oh, he has friends finally.
I think, like, all these kids have an element of, like, destiny and, like, being boxed in by who their parents are, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, Annabeth wants to be an architect because Athena was. It doesn't seem that out of the question that it's just like, oh yeah, Cyclopes like to forge shit.
Yeah, no. I think, and, like, there's obviously some degree of, like, predestination here. I don't know. It's not, like, in a super overt, like, oh, I hate this way, but, like...
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting. I think what it comes down to is, like, I think it's even said in the book, like, Hephaestus' cabin doesn't judge him because like they're used to Cyclops.
It is nice that he has friends.
I think that when it comes to people who have friends, someone who doesn't have friends, because no friends, we do have. I think when it comes to friends, I think when it comes to people who have friends, that sucks as a reading. And speaking of people who have friends, Tantalus and Dionysus.
Yes, I was actually just about to ask what you thought of Dionysus in particular in these chapters.
I think he is so good still. Like, and not like a good person, obviously, but like
obviously
he's letting his like worst nature run because of like who he's around.
Yeah.
Usually he's around Chiron, who is like kind of a stick in the mud.
Mm-hmm.
But like being around Tantalus, who just unabashedly hates everything, like especially Camp Half-Blood, like yeah, of course, like he's gonna be a bit more of a jerk than usual.
That makes sense. I think there's possibly a bit of a missed opportunity here.
Yeah.
Where, like, I think it would have been really cool to have Mr. D be like the devil you know.
Ooh.
So like, because we see he doesn't like Tantalus that much. He fucks with him a bit and abandons him during the Chariot Race. But like, I think it would have been really interesting if like he didn't have a lot of attachment to Chiron, but he's angry that his like the person he worked with got taken out from under him for political reasons and was replaced with this asshole.
I would have liked that.
Yeah.
We could still maybe see some of that. I'm not sure, but probably not.
Like I said, we're getting a little bit of that, but I don't think it's going to be like their dynamic.
Yeah. And I am just kind of enjoying them as like the snarky jerks.
Mm-hmm.
Tantalus is interesting.
I found him a little bit underwhelming, if I'm honest. Up until this point, every character's had like a really strong design. Like you have like a really good image of what they're supposed to look like. And like Tantalus is described, but I found myself having to go back a couple of times and read it just because like it didn't make much of an impact on me.
That makes sense. I didn't really have that same problem. He's kind of generic, but like I did think his campfire story was kind of scary though.
That's like, yeah, he's a little bit more intimidating when we get to that.
It's one of those things where maybe it's like he feels underwhelming on purpose.
I guess that could be it, yeah.
And then it's like, oh, he's just this weird scrawny guy. But then, oh, he's actually an evil king who tried to like steal the recipes for ambrosia or tried to like reverse engineer it. And
he's the classical antiquity version of Plankton from SpongeBob SquarePants.
Oh my god. You're right. I feel like kings in mythological ancient Greece were always feeding their children to gods.
Yeah, that seems regular for them.
Yeah. Is this?
I imagine there's just like an orchard with a bunch of kings, and Tantalus is just one of them.
Isn't this what Coriolanus is about?
Huh? I don't know what that is.
Okay, I'm trying to think of the Shakespeare play where a guy fed.
Titus Andronicus?
There you go. Thank you. I was thinking of Coriolanus. You had the right one though. It sounds kind of like Titus Andronicus. I wonder if Titus Andronicus is based off of this, like anything similar.
I'm not sure. The guy in Titus Andronicus, he kidnaps and kills someone else's kids and then feeds them the kids.
That's true.
So it's a kind of a different thing, and it's vindictive in a different way, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so we get introduced to the Sea of Monsters as a concept in these chapters.
Yeah, the idea of it being in the Bermuda Triangle that's a slam dunk. That's a really good idea you had there, Rick. It absolutely fits within like the way things were established to work in the last book. It's just a really great addition.
It makes you think like what other stuff has moved and shifted around. Should we talk about Hermes?
Yeah, let's do that. So when I was saying at the top of this that like, oh yeah, there's some scenes in this that I really like. The scene with Hermes was absolutely what I was talking about.
This might be the strongest scene in the book so far.
Mm-hmm.
Hermes I love how Hermes. This is so brilliant. He's like, Percy sees him and thinks he's just some dude who's jogging and accidentally wandered into Camp Half-Blood. And then he pulls out his flip phone, which has got the antenna thing, and it has the caduceus around it. It's so perfect.
I love how chill he is.
Yeah.
Like these chapters have been like really, really stressful for Percy. They just piled problem after problem onto him. And him just being able to sit down and chat with this guy who is completely relaxed is really nice.
And seems very confident in Percy, kind of. Like, Hermes specifically seeks him out, like, hey, Percy Jackson, maybe you can, like... Percy Jackson, as a series so far, is really good at awkward father-son relationships.
It sure is.
And this is another really good example when Percy realizes that Hermes is, like, saying without saying that he wants Percy to, like, turn Luke back to good.
I wonder if Rick is working through some stuff.
He might be. But it's really good because, like, it humanizes the gods some more.
Mm-hmm.
As, like Hermes is, like, he's not gonna come right out and say, like, he kind of says it because they get into a conversation about, like, oh, you should always try and save family or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But
he doesn't just come up to Percy and say, hey, help me save my kids.
Yeah, but that is obviously, like, the reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's nice that, like, because this isn't, like, a healthy father-son relationship either. This is, like...
Absolutely not.
Because we know that Luke hates Hermes. Absolutely
despises him.
That's, like, his big villain motivation is that he hates his dad so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's valuable to see, like... It's valuable to see Hermes after learning that, because this is the textbook, like, oh, my dad's just so busy all the time, he never has any time for me. He's always making business calls. He's, like, that type of character, to a T.
He's always talking to his snakes.
Always. And I love the snakes.
The snakes are extremely good. I love George and Martha.
George and Martha have my heart. When they're, like, fighting with each other, and he's all like, don't get yourselves tied up in a knot again, and they're like, sorry, whatever. It's so good.
And George just keeps asking Percy to bring him a rat.
And then they vomit up the gifts. They unhinge their little snake jaws to give the gifts to Percy. Perfect.
I have to confess to being for reading something in a slightly embarrassing way. Like, Hermes reconstitutes his phone into his staff, and from the description of it I went, oh yeah, it's the symbol from the medbay in the Enterprise.
Jane.
Yeah.
Jane.
I know.
I'm sorry. You'll be good. You'll be okay one of these days.
One of these days.
The best joke in this novel so far is Hermes telling George or Martha to just refer someone to Eris in customer service. It's just a funny it's good, like a little, like, oh, get it, because Eris is the goddess of discord, and customer service is discordant. You know, it's good.
Does that mean that Eris is currently ferrying this call?
I don't understand.
She's the goddess of discord.
Oh, I get it. That was funny.
Thank you.
Yeah, she is. Hello, Eris.
Hello.
Yeah, that's my second patron after Aphrodite.
I mean, we could just run this podcast over Skype if we lose that. We don't wanna, but we could. Yeah,
that's true. That's a scary concept. I left Skype many years ago after years of Homestuck RP and various things. I mean,
you've already said the most regrettable thing you could possibly do on Skype, so.
I mean, I started out on MSPARP. Or as we affectionately called it back then, MS Parp, or at least as I called it. What?
Pop sounds like a fart noise.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, they would let you have, like, little special icons of, like, not icons, but they would, like, automatically convert your, like, text to the typing quirk or whatever. and like the color of the character you're playing as. It was good. It wasn't good all the time because you would just do like Omegle. Is it Omegle? I always say Omegle.
I always say Omegle as well. I don't know what's correct.
It would just have like Omegle style. Like you click a button as like have a rant, and it would be like future carcinogenic has not carcinogenic. Wait, what
are you talking about?
It would just be like, like whatever. Who cares? I don't need to get into the intricate details of Homestuck role playing on our Percy Jackson podcast. But
hey, listener, if you want to hear me suffering while Jacqueline makes me read Homestuck, subscribe to the Patreon and listen to our bonus episodes.
Yeah, we have a recurring segment now where Jane every week has to read Homestuck, and now she loves it.
Incorrect.
Find out which of us is right on the Patreon. Oh, speaking of Hermes being awesome, Hermes cabin is noted as like having the guys who can smuggle in coke from the nearest convenience store.
Yeah, that tracks.
That rules. Screw Luke's video game room. There's always like it's that same kind of like, oh, they have a connection to the outside world, but I think done much better.
I think that's the only part of Camp Half-Blood that didn't turn into a movie. There is no gamer cabin.
I wish there was okay. One of the cabins has to be gamers. Which one would it be?
Oh. See, I want to say Hephaestus because he's a weirdo, but also most of his kids seem nice so far. So that feels unfair to paint them like that.
The one I will say is Aphrodite, and be like, or they would like play. You know when people play video games on Twitch, but they like have the video game in the smaller window and their self in the largest window.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would do that. That's Aphrodite cabin behavior.
If you're a child of Aphrodite in 2021, you absolutely have a live 2D rig.
Oh my! Do you though? Because like you would probably want to show off your face cam or whatever, right?
You switch back and forth so you can draw in both audiences.
You're right. Maximum attraction.
Exactly. Well, we haven't even talked about the Chariot Race.
Oh, we haven't. Okay. The Chariot Race is really good.
I think it's a downgrade from CTF2 Fort in the first book.
I don't disagree. It's definitely like a downgrade, but I still think it's better than Quidditch.
It is better than Quidditch, and I suppose, like, the thing is that even though it is a downgrade from Capture the Flag, it means that Rick isn't just tying himself to doing the same damn thing every book, which was half of what made Quidditch so terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
We're not
dodging that problem.
If we got legitimately got like a different sporting event in every book, I would be very happy with that. Even if some of them are like less good than others.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that this is missing, and I think this can absolutely be put back into other events that are possibly in later books, is that it's missing like the inter-cabin politics and like alliance building that made like the build up to Capture the Flag so fun.
I agree. I think it serves a different purpose, but it still serves a purpose. And so far as in this book, we're meeting a bunch of different cabin people, like we're meeting a bunch of different campers.
Mm-hmm.
Because our viewpoint was pretty limited to like just Clarice and Aries' cabin, Luke, and our main character's last book.
That's true.
Now we've got Silena Beauregard from Aphrodite cabin. We've got Charles Beckendorf. We've got the Stoll brothers. We've got everybody. It's like we're introduced to a lot of new characters, and so I think since we're like giving a bit more focus to the other cabins, it's good that we have these like the individual cabins competing and showing off their strengths.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I do think that the Stoll brothers is, I don't know, I'm saying.
I think I think Percy should have got more appreciation for cracking that joke about their surnames. I think that's a good joke and he should be lauded for it.
I agree. I was gonna just make a joke like, oh, Stoll Brothers, but but then I remember that was actually a joke that they made in the book.
Not only is it a joke that's in the book, it's a joke that nobody thought was funny.
Yeah, so I guess it's a good thing that I didn't say it.
That's okay, I find it funny.
I'm glad you find it funny. This is a podcast that we basically just do for each other.
It's true.
Thank you, all our loyal listeners.
Thank you.
Me falling down. We haven't talked about the ship yet, huh?
Yeah, I was about to, that's the other thing we haven't addressed is like all of Chapter 8.
I have no notes on Chapter 8. I've
also got very few. I was worried that was like, oh, I just won't have anything to say about this. Apparently it's just not that interesting.
It was okay. It was like fine, as it was kind of boring.
It's going from point A to point B and then setting up like where all the stuff is actually going to happen in the next few chapters.
Yeah, like I can appreciate a good setup chapter. It's just not the pace I'm used to.
How do you mean?
Like last book, usually the way that like encounters freaking RPG BS terminology.
Listen, they literally go on a side quest in that book. They're encounters.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of a main quest. I guess
it's secretly revealed to tie back to the main quest, but still.
Yeah. The different encounters that they have are like in the first book, they were largely isolated. They were like one chapter is this, one chapter is this, one chapter is this. We got, I don't think, very few, if any, instances of like, okay, maybe the Hades stuff, but that feels too big to count. Of like they get to a like encounter of like some enemy, and there they have to set up first. You know what I mean? They haven't usually had a chapter of setup.
Even with Hades, in the lead up, we got like Percy going and getting the gifts and having like that conversation where we learn more about Poseidon, and then the encounter with Procrustes, and then Charon, and then Cerberus, and then like Kronos, and then we get to Hades.
Yeah. So I think that's what I mean by like the pace feels completely different to me.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily bad. A setup chapter is probably not. I don't know. I haven't read the next chapters yet. It might be necessary. I thought that it was interesting to. Actually, there wasn't a lot that was interesting.
There's not really. I mean, it had the same energy as like the Medusa chapter, I think, with them just showing up somewhere, kind of just exhausted and wanting to lay down for a while. But with no snake lady fight.
Because they go right to sleep as soon as they get there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if... Because I remember even while I was thinking, you just kind of got up in the middle of the night, drank some Coke, and then rode a horse for 5 minutes. I'm not sure why you're so burnt out.
I mean, maybe riding a seahorsey is like, really, really exhausting.
I think it even says that it's quite easy and Percy doesn't even need to hold on to it.
Well, listen, you can use facts and logic all you like, but...
You're immune.
I'm immune to facts and logic. Yeah, this chapter is kind of nothing. I don't know. I guess I was surprised to see Luke, kind of.
He was always going to show up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think the thing that it was is that I think it's... I keep trying to say, like, oh, I think it's interesting that blank, but nothing comes to mind.
There is a couple of parts of this chapter that I do like.
Uh-huh.
I like that when Percy is, like, he's talking about his mother naming him and wanting to have, like, the same luck as Perseus. And he says, like, oh, all the other Greek heroes died. Betrayed, mauled, mutilated, poisoned, or cursed by the gods. And I just think it's neat that, like, if you actually go over that list and go over the events of the Lightning Thief, all of those things have already happened to Percy.
Oh my god. Wait, yeah, you're right. That's really funny. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, it's a neat little thing.
None of it took him out of the action, so I guess he's got that luck.
Yeah.
That is a really good moment. I hadn't thought about it. And it's like it's sweet too. We get some more like
it tells us a little bit about Sally.
It tells us a little bit about Sally, and that's nice.
I also appreciate that Annabeth like can't spell Cyclops.
That was
Like,
really good, because sometimes I think I get to it, like, we get too into the, like, oh, Annabeth's just, like, the smart girl or whatever. And, like, it doesn't
yeah,
make you dumb to not be able to spell or whatever, but, like, uh, or it doesn't make you not smart, or whatever, to not be able to smell. Smell? Let me try that one more time. It doesn't make you, like, not smart to not be able to spell, but I think it's, like, a good reminder, like, hey, these characters still have dyslexia.
yeah, like her being like the smart one TM doesn't like it doesn't like cancel out the dyslexia that she has.
Yeah, which is really good.
Hmm.
I like that. It was
Yeah, I
also a
mean,
very humorous scene because it was kind of unexpected.
yeah, like the way she reacts to it as well is quite funny. Like she like stamps her foot.
Yeah, these are children. These are seventh graders. It's very good.
It's true.
I I feel like you might sometimes it's easy to forget that, like, these are 12-year-olds running around with swords and such. Although
Yeah, it's not very responsible.
Luke is like 50. How old is Luke? He's like 18, right?
17, I think. I guess he would be 18 now because this is a year later.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I guess I forgot that, like, there was that age difference there. And
Mhm.
I think it makes sense. Annabeth, like, has a crush on him, like, oh yeah, the older kid, you have a crush
It
on.
also makes sense that Percy has a crush on
True.
him,
It's the same thing. The cool older kid you have a crush on. It's
who
classic.
has now betrayed them.
Who has now betrayed them? And you probably have. Okay. What I am excited for in these upcoming chapters is to see any, like, harsh, like, feelings and, like, dynamics that have had to change, because
Yeah,
we haven't seen, like, Annabeth and Luke interact yet, since he betrayed the camp.
yeah. There's right. Also during that evening patrol scene that I was talking about before, there's also a section where we see Percy processing his feelings about Luke betraying him, like for the first time, really. Because book one ended like right after it happened. We didn't really get his reaction to that beyond just shock, and we can actually see how those feelings have grown and festered and become like real hatred for Luke. And I'm really
Yeah,
excited to see how that goes when they like confront each other again.
I really like the this, like, contemplative scene of him, like, sitting on the hill and looking at his scar from where the pit scorpion stung him.
Yeah.
That was really good.
I just have one more thing to say that I liked,
Okay.
which is I think the conversation that Annabeth and Percy have while they're like washing dishes and talking about the Golden Fleece, like even though it's just an exposition dump, that's a very funny interaction. Like
It's
Percy's little interjections are just like they distract you from the fact that it's just telling you stuff.
Yeah, like, she's telling. I didn't mention this in the summary because time. And
Yeah,
if I mentioned, like, every interesting or, like, maybe important detail that would happen, we would have had, like, a 12-minute summary.
it's
Uh,
true.
this felt like these chapters felt so packed, but she's telling him, like, the myth of, like, Europa and what's his face and
Cadmus.
Cadmus, from Superman, and she's telling him the myth of a Cadmus in Europa, and she's like, oh, at one point Europa falls off falls down and dies in the sea, but it doesn't really matter. And Percy's like, it mattered to her. It's good.
Yeah,
All right.
I think that's everything for these set of chapters.
Yeah, I think we can wrap it up. If you'd like to reach the show, you can drop us an email at unwisegirlspod@gmail.com, or find us on Twitter at unwisegirls, where we also have a link to our official Discord server. If you like us, you can support us by continuing to download our episodes, maybe leaving a nice rating and review, and checking out our Patreon at I don't usually say the link, which is a mistake. Patreon.com/unwisegirls. For $1 a month, you get a special role in our Discord, marking you as a camp counselor. For $3 a month, you get an even specialer role as a friend of Dionysus, and access to all of our bonus content. And if you're feeling especially generous, for $5, you get the special role of Aphrodite's Chosen. all the bonus content, and a shout out at the end of episodes.
Speaking of which, this week we like to thank Mercy, Veronica, Friend, and Medusa, Daddy Poseidon's ex.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, wait, we have a segment that we almost forgot to do.
Oh yeah, let's do a segment.
We might need to edit. Do we want to edit this back? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
We have been forgetting to do this segment lately, and we need to talk about which Percy Jackson characters are not cishet based on these chapters. Jacqueline, do you have any thoughts?
My nominee is Silena Beauregard. She has huge lesbian energy to me. A name like Silena Beauregard, you're either like a weird racist or like a cool lesbian.
I mean, given that this is a camp that is now constantly talking about how much they love Border Patrol, it may be the former.
Oh, I don't want to think about that. And she teaches Percy how to ride a Pegasus. That's nice.
Yeah.
Who's your nominee?
My nominees are Percy and Grover, because they have bonded their souls to one another.
They are married.
Which does not seem like very heterosexual behavior to me.
No. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening.
As we say at the end of every episode.
See you next week, Camp Half-Blood.
See you next week, Camp Half-Blood.